To be honest, I'm not really sure how to review this movie. I'm just not. Like, various questions come to my mind, such as how much weight do I put into the objective quality components of its construction versus the actual viewing experience that I ended up having with it? What kinds of things do I talk about, and how much praise do I heap versus the actual experiences I had while watching? Where is the line that I draw to think about Marty Supreme in a more properly critical context versus a personal one? As I have agonized over these questions, I have landed on exactly 0 answers, and the truth is, I feel somewhat suffocated. Because at the end of the day, this film that I've been really looking forward to watching because of the broad-scale high praise it has received, this film is incredible in nearly every aspect that I could quote-unquote analyze it. This movie is impressive, impactful, and frankly, pretty genius. And yet, Marty Supreme made for one of the most miserable theater viewing experiences that I have ever had. In fairness, the reasons that I struggled with my viewing are nearly all completely personal. They have very little, if anything, to do with the more objective measures of the film, and more to do with how I personally reacted to them as a result of the headspace that I have been in for a number of weeks at this point. Nobody tells you how hard it is to review something that you know is great, but kind of hated experiencing. Or, well, I'm pretty sure plenty have done so elsewhere, actually, but I think that comes from people who, actually wind up disliking the thing that they're reviewing, despite feeling deep down that they should actually be enjoying it. That's not so much the case for me here, because I do like this film. I like it a lot, and I was moved by it, actually, but... Man, if I can't say I kind of wish I didn't watch this, at least not when I did. It was a struggle. To start, I do want to make clear, Marty Supreme is a wonderfully crafted movie. The directorial and cinematographic decisions are on point, as well as many other general construction elements, like music, sound design, set and costume and production design, all those things. I have generally made it a point to call out and really discuss many of these bigger back-end elements of the movies I cover to try to explain what it is I actually like or dislike about the things that I watch. I could do much the same here, but I will keep it as short and simple as this. If you want to watch a fantastic film that focuses far more on the intimate than the bombastic, this is a great example of what can be done there. But that's honestly not really what I want to talk about today. I mean, sure, I'll talk a little about some of the normal stuff like I do, because some of it is relevant and worth noting, but even this I won't go into too deeply, so I guess I'll just get it out of the way now. My main praise of Marty Supreme is that the performances of it are easily the thing that shine the brightest here. While everything else about the movie is great as is, you should want to watch this movie solely for the generational performances that are given. There's not a single bad one of them. There's just not. Every character, every argument, every kerfuffle, every motivation, every flaw and failing and hope and dream, every single actor pours their entire soul into their respective role. None are distracting, none are unbelievable, none are hammed up, none are remotely unsatisfying. Above all other things, I cannot speak enough to the performances of this film. Every single one of them is genuinely out of this world. These performances are what allow the movie to feel so painfully raw, visceral, heavy, and real, despite the beautiful presentation of it. You by no means feel like you're watching an amateur flick to get that quote-unquote raw quality to it, and obviously nobody involved in the making of this is an amateur, but I am blown away by how stripped back Marty Supreme manages to be in the face of its own professionalism. The film is arresting and difficult to watch at times. At other times, it is utterly beautiful. At all times, it is filled to the brim with back and forth naive confidence and optimism and downright despair and tragedy. Marty Supreme is a character drama, and these performances, being as good as they are what makes this movie special. And on that note, I couldn't be happier that Chalamet at least won a Golden Globe Best Actor award for this, because if he didn't get some manner of Academy recognition for this role, I would be livid. That all said, I would be lying, again, if I told you that I had a good time in the theater with Marty Supreme, because the truth is I just did not. I did not have a good time with this. It's kind of funny, though, in a way. Like, Marty Supreme is a very long movie. It's over 2.5 hours long. Somehow, the runtime is, like, not long enough in some ways, simultaneous to feeling every second as long as it is. It is structured into 3 distinct acts, as many films are, though the third is a good bit shorter than the first couple, but in either case, it is very obvious where the cutoffs between these are. So clear, in fact, that I almost wish I had been able to watch this movie in multiple sittings. I know this is probably going to sound crazy, but it's true. Each of the first couple acts is around an hour long or just a little bit more, but they are so densely constructed and so intentionally paced that they almost come across as like mini episodes that make up the eventual final film. It's almost like watching a mini series all in one sitting because of the vision behind structure and tone and everything else. Hell, Act 1 alone, despite being only around 70 minutes at a guess, feels in many ways like an entire feature-length offering by itself. But therein lies the problem. So incredible was each segment of Marty Supreme that I actually found myself needing breathers between acts that I just didn't get. I feel like I needed some time to be able to stew on everything before the next arc of the film ensued. Thus, I became quickly overwhelmed, and by the time the third act rolled around, I really just needed a break. And so this is the part of the review where I get a little bit more pensive, I suppose. I don't want to say negative, though there's, the chance that some of this may sound negative, but I promise that's not the intent. I'm not trying to criticize in that way. The fact of the matter is that I was not in the headspace to fully appreciate Marty Supreme. Much of the reason I opted to not speak too much on direction, cinematography, all of that other stuff is because much of these aspects of the film kind of went in one ear and out the other, so to speak. I had a lot of trouble actually paying attention to the craftsmanship of the movie or noticing it in the first place, except at particular moments where, random things would strike me very deeply. Granted, this may have been intentional to let the picture, and especially the performances, which I did pay attention to, speak for themselves. If that's the case, and if that makes any sense, I'm glad. I feel like I'm doing a dreadful job explaining. Either way, the point that I'm trying to make is that Marty Supreme hit me in ways and on levels I did not anticipate. More relevant to this review in particular, it hit in ways and on levels that scarcely even make sense to me, distracting me quite frequently with my own current emotional struggles, and thus making it essentially impossible to explain exactly why I had a borderline miserable time watching this in the theater. One thing I can say is that watching this alone, where I normally go to the theater with somebody else, may have contributed to this, but genuinely it's just that I'm a very distracted person these days. I don't feel it's my place to speak in depth about all of this, and to be clear, I very, very rarely believe there is a necessarily appropriate timing to do so either, so I will spare you the details, but what I can say is that I have been all up in my head about a lot of things for quite a while now. At the time of writing this review, it's been about a month of a completely different funk than I've experienced in at least 5 years, if not more than that. At the time of the video version's posting for this review, it's more like a month and a half, and I can pretty confidently assert, especially with even more recent developments just since writing the script that I'm reading off of here, I can pretty confidently assert that this funk will certainly continue to last at least as much longer as this video's release, and to maybe continue for a significant portion of the year onward as well. I have been struggling with some things recently, and Marty Supreme inexplicably brought many of those struggles to the forefront of my mind. The reasons why don't actually fully make sense, because there's not really much of the film that I relate to, per se. There's just a ton of time that I spent just agitated and, again, all up in my head while I was in the theater. And mind you, I was actually completely alone in there, though whether fortunately or unfortunately, I'm still unsure. While I was in the theater, I was anxious, I was restless, and overall pretty miserable for much of the film's runtime. Not because of what the film was or was not doing, but because I could not escape what was going on in my head. At the same time, there are some really powerful moments in here. You know, I can count at least a few times where I got chills while watching the movie. There were a couple moments that had tears welling up in my eyes because of what the movie was doing and not necessarily because of what I was thinking about. And those moments, come to think, were the handful that, you know, related closely enough to my own experiences or ambitions or whatever else to crack that merely distracting quality that so much of the rest of the movie already had. And so they stuck and I guess managed to be powerful both for what they reflected back to me and for what they meant in the context of the film. But I just can't shake how much I struggled to watch this at the end of the day. It's certainly a case where I know that the baggage that I brought to Marty Supreme is unfair to consider in terms of its rating. But I struggle to rate this movie objectively. I'm not really in a place to be able to dissect and separate the parts of my critic brain from the non-critic brain to make that possible. As such, my rating for Marty Supreme, you know, in some ways could be lower than, say, a more sober version of myself would be likely to grant. This is a film that, in happier or more emotionally stable times, I could see myself giving a perfect 5 out of 5 and considering it an all-timer legitimately, especially if I took the chance to really look at the artistic quality more deeply on a rewatch. There's part of me that has to give the movie that rating anyway. But I do have to consider how hard of a viewing experience this was for me on a personal level. I'm granting the film the full 5 out of 5 for now, just as close as I can manage from an objective level, but I will have to return later to determine if it will receive my orange letterboxed heart as well, just some point in the future when I don't feel miserable. It feels like a snub, even if it's not meant to. I think I can safely recommend Marty Supreme to anybody who's planning to watch it to any degree, if only for the performances. Those performances are absolutely worth watching it. I, from a personal level, certainly wish that I had had a more actively enjoyable experience with it, but I just didn't. You know, I guess I can be glad that I didn't watch it a week earlier than I did, because if I had, I would have been even more miserable than I already was watching this movie. But as is, I kind of just have to acknowledge that Marty Supreme happened to ruin a great couple days that I actually had going, and I really wish it hadn't, and I haven't fully recovered from that funk yet, even though it has been a handful of days since then. So it's just really unfortunate. I know Marty Supreme is a great movie. I really like it from an objective measure. The critic part of my brain is screaming at me right now, but I also just had a miserable time actually watching it. So Marty Supreme is one that I will have to watch again at some point in the future. Like I said, when I'm not feeling as miserable as I am right now. So yeah, that's how I feel. Let me know how you feel about Marty Supreme. I know that basically all of my friends really love this movie, and in some sense I also did, and I hope that anybody watching this review enjoyed watching it. I really appreciate it, and I hope that, you know, kind of referencing personal stuff and talking about how much I struggled with the movie despite liking it didn't, you know, turn any of you guys off to my style of content, I guess. This review's probably one of my less quality ones. In either case, I am really glad that you watched it. I've been your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and I hope to see you guys in this Wednesday's video where I'm actually going to be talking about all of the movies that I watched in 2025 and ranking all of them. I hope to see you guys there.